Okay. Following the discussions this morning, we'll begin this afternoon with a further exploration on what sorts of opportunities exist, what new approaches can we think of with regards to youth empowerment through digital skills. To moderate the session, I would like to introduce Thomas Munthali. Thomas is the Director for Knowledge and Learning Development at the Africa Capacity Building Foundation.
Afternoon, distinguished participants. As they say, all protocols observed. It's been quite an exciting couple of days now for those of us who started off from yesterday, and we're building on this very important subject. And this afternoon, we yet have a very important session with very distinguished panelists as well. And so I know that some colleagues are not in the room yet, but one of the skills that we need to develop and we need to teach the youth is time management. So we're going straight into it. I am Thomas Munthali, Director of Knowledge and Learning at the African Capacity Building Foundation. It's a specialized agency of the African Union on capacity development, and our headquarters is based in Harare. I will be joined here by the following panelists, and please, if I do mention your name, do make your way to the podium. So we have Tanimomo Dare, the Chief Creative Officer of Ideas and Solutions in Nigeria. I thought we would have more hands than that. Thanks so much. And then second is Jerome Maurice, who is the CEO of Global E-Schools and Communities Initiative. And we also have Moussa Dio, Chief of Service, IDVIC, Senegal. Moussa, are you here? No? Okay. Lastly, we do have William Idem Senyo, CEO Impact Hub. We also were supposed to have Kenny Morolang, who is a board member of the National Youth Development Agency in South Africa. But he prefers to intervene from the audience, so he will not be coming on the podium. I think he's allergic to panel questions. But we are delighted to have him around. Now, as I said, I want us to go straight into the issues. What will happen really is that we would want our panel to tell us what their take on the topic is, and then they can concretely suggest to us a few action points. And before that, they will have to tell us what seems in their experiences to work or not work from where they are coming from. And if you have your program, the technical session that we're dealing with today, this afternoon, is on looking at from skills to market. So we're really looking at the new approaches for youth empowerment through digital skills and entrepreneurship. In other ways, we should be asking ourselves the question, developing skills for what? Developing skills for what purpose? So with that, I would want to call upon the presenters, and I will start, I'll give them some 8 minutes, not 10 minutes, but 8 minutes, so that we want to manage the time because we have another session and at the end of, after this one, and we want to make sure that we don't keep people here for forever. So we'll start with Tanimo Dare, who is the Chief Creative Officer of Ideas and Solutions in Nigeria.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tanimo Modari from Nigeria, and I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Ideas and Solutions. Like you can see right here, the project overview is African youth, new approach in youth empowerment and entrepreneurship, using digital skills as a driver. And the project, we plan to actually start with Nigeria as a case study. I won't bore you all the details. Now, this is one of my favorite African personalities at the moment, Strive Masiwa, and it said, and I quote, "I've said this time and again, Africans' next billionaires will include those who learn coding, which in some countries is now being taught to 5-year-olds. So a room full of African nation people, the question is, what are you teaching your children from age 5, and above at this moment? I mean, that question I want us to take home and answer that individually. Now, Africans are millionaires. We've talked so much about figures, unemployment in Africa and all of that, which over 200 million people unemployed in Africa, as it were. Yeah, this is one of the areas I want to lay emphasis on. More than 70% of African youth live on less than $2 per day, and this was given by the African Economic Forum. Now, $2 per day. Now, how then do we change this narrative from the African youth? So it's not just a problem of unemployment right now, it's underemployment. Because how long does a young man earn less than $2 per day? We all just had lunch right now, and I'm sure lunch costs more than $2. So we're just eating the lunch of so many African kids out there. So the question is, how do we change this narrative from them earning from less than $2 to X number of dollars? And one of the easiest way to go on this route is actually digital, and I'll explain some of those things later to you. The social impact. This is an acceptable reality on the continent with an impressive pool of talent and creativity. Youth unemployment is a tickling time bomb. As events in North Africa, the Arab Spring, like we all know, has shown, lack of employment opportunities can undermine social cohesion and political instability. That's AFDB. Now, I'm from Nigeria, like you all know, and the Boko Haram sect in Nigeria is mainly driven by the ideology, pervasive unemployment in Northern Africa, making it easy for easy recruitment of jobless people, jobless young people. Now, this is where we're going to, digital skills as a leverage. Okay, sorry. The shortage of digital skills in the current marketplace is unprecedented. It is estimated that over 4.4 million IT jobs will be created around big data. We've heard so much about big data already and all of that. Now, however, only a third of these new jobs will be filled. The question is, out there on a global scale, there's a deficit of about 4.4 million jobs. Now, which of those jobs will Africans be filling? Now, recently in Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians were deported from Libya. And, they're all going to Libya and to European countries to look for greener pastures, hoping that when they get to Europe, life will be better. But the question I keep asking myself and I keep asking everybody is, when they get to Europe, what are they going to be doing? What jobs are they going to be doing, apart from the menial jobs they are looking forward to getting? But the question is, if we train those young folks from Africa and give them digital skills, it's easy for them. They don't even need to cross the borders, illegally. People from Europe and other countries who come poach them. This is what I believe. The next point is that the impact of digital technologies is now felt not only in the IT department, but across the entire organization, creating a huge demand for digital skills. Now, the good thing about digitalization, what we're talking about, the theme of the conference, youth skills and enterprise in the digital age, is the fact that IT skills, digital skills, are not just needed in the IT space. Now, in the medical world, people are actually using IT skills. In farming, in every sphere. So once we can empower our young people properly, we can be too sure that the opportunities is such a vast one for them, as it were. Now, our company is called Ideas and Solutions. So your idea can transform Africa. This we believe very much in. One idea is just good enough to revolutionize the Africa. And this is our motivation quote. There's no neutrality in the world. You either have to be a part of the solution or you're going to be part of the problem. We choose the later. We choose the former. We want to be part of, we don't just want to be talkers. So myself and my team, we've come together. Now we're partnering with a school in India. It's one of the biggest schools in animation in India. And the animation industry is about $800 billion. But interestingly, Africa is not even playing in that space of the billion-dollar industry. So we're saying, okay, enough said. How then do we form alliances? And you know that mentoring is one of the keys to success in life. So we're saying, okay, let's go get the people who have done this thing, who have succeeded at doing it. So we're forming an alliance with ANIMASTER, that's the name of the school. And so they're going to be teaching courses in masters in animation, BS in animation, BS in gaming. We all have phones here. Can I see your hands if you have a phone here, a smartphone? Fantastic. All the games on our phone, they're actually European based. We don't have African games. So we're in Tunis today, and I say to them, if a group of 10 boys in Tunis come together and create a game, and they say, you know what, Samsung, how many people are in Tunis? We have a game for you to actually put on every Samsung phone you sell in Tunis. How much do you think those guys will be earning doing that? You understand? So the same thing across the different countries in Africa. So we're saying we need to change the narratives. You know, the digital space, Africa needs to prepare our young people to be able to play in this market. And this is what we're doing, my Nigerian story. At the moment, we're talking to quite a number of universities in Nigeria, both private and public universities, and all of that. So interestingly, one of these, if you know Nigeria very well, is a state called Imo State. We're talking to the governor. He's excited about the project. He's giving us all the support we need. So in about 6 months from now, everything, God willing, we're going to be starting our animation courses. So we have diploma in animation, diploma in gaming, diploma in web development, diploma in web application. So these are the things in mobile applications, you know, all of that. So we're going to be starting with the diploma courses, 6 month courses, 1 year courses, and all of that. And at the end of the day, we plan to actually have our own animation studios where we're generating content. Black Panther just came out not too long ago, and it's eating the box office. So we're saying, Africa, how then do we sit down and begin to turn things around for ourselves?
3 minutes.
Okay. Now, this is one of the big dreams we have also, is a proposed youth empowerment edutainment center, which we intend to build across African universities. It's like the ICT room, the library, the sports facilities. So we're hoping that with this about $500,000 project, we're hoping that someday we can replicate this across African universities, such that the students actually have fantastic ICT coding is being taught in those places. And also that's one of the dreams we're having. We're pushing that at the moment. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Tanimomo. And he was very clever that he didn't break up when he was speaking so that you could hardly intervene to say it's 2 minutes remaining. So that was very clever of you, Tanimomo, but he did his time just on time. Okay, I think the key point there is, he's shared the Nigerian experience, and you can see that what seems to be emerging clearly there is that more jobs are being created in the digital area. And this shows the relevance of this developing skills in that particular area. I will throughout be sharing some important facts. And one fact from the African Economic Outlook, the 2017 one, which is done by ADB, OECD, and UNDP jointly, says that youth with tertiary education are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than the youth with primary education or less. In other words, the more our youth are getting educated, the lesser the likelihood of them being employed. So the question is, what are we teaching them? What skills are we building? Are the skills relevant for the market? This is what this panel is dealing with. So I'll be calling to the podium again another distinguished panelist, Jérôme Morisset, who is the CEO for Global eSchools and Communities Initiatives. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for being with us. Can I just say a little bit about the importance of this conference, and indeed the meeting we had yesterday itemized quite a lot of the dimensions and the characteristics that we have to build into TVET. It's an enormously huge operation. It's a task that has challenged the entire world, mainly because of the academic drift into university education, influenced probably by parents, unfortunately. The professions and the liberal arts are the areas where everybody is charging off to. And unfortunately, universities have become institutions where finance matters. So it's much easier to put on a whole string of courses in the liberal arts, incredibly cheap. You can pack 1,000 young people into one lecture, but to equip space for real technology-driven programs and computer programming, etc., costs a lot of money. So I think that because of that, and the lack of career guidance, which again was mentioned yesterday, we have a situation throughout the entire world. In Europe alone, there are almost two-thirds of a million jobs vacant in IT, in computer programming specifically, or in the ICT applications and the software development area. The same thing is beginning to happen in Africa. My institution is based in Kenya, and Kenyan industry is growing rapidly, and so is the technology industry, but there's already appearing, as I can see, a skills gap. And yet we have hundreds of people graduating with liberal arts and communications and all kinds of other things, which are, in fact, it might be great in the liberal sense of the word education, but absolutely no good for skills, for job acquisitions. So I represent GESCI, Global E-Schools and Communities Initiative, and I want to make a plea for an area which needs to go into this web portal, which is the cultural and creative industries. And you can see the dynamics of it. There was a recent Ernst & Young study created which says that it's one of the fastest growing industries in the entire world. It's driven the digital and the knowledge economy as a key driver there. And some 2,250 billion was the value of the industry in 2016. And it is still growing. It makes up 3% of global GDP. I mean, quite phenomenal. And more than any other sector in Europe, Europe's cultural sector employs people between the ages of 15 and 29, and actually there are more women than in the traditional areas. And if you're looking at the music industry in particular, 50% are women. And traditionally, it's made up of very small startups, maybe individuals, maybe 4 or 5 people, but all innovative people. And they in turn develop companies and obviously employ people. And you're 3 times more likely to be self-employed than in the rest of the working population. So surely those characteristics should influence how we are preparing people for this world. It seems to tap into the issues that really matter, like more women into jobs, building on the creativity and the innovation of young people, which, as somebody said this morning, the young people who are way ahead of us. We might be here discussing what should be in a TVET program. Young people already know for years what should be in a TVET program, and they're avoiding the situation, and they're going into employment on their own. So what do we mean by the cultural industries? It means all these things here. It means advertising and new online, offline, print media, which is a huge one, animation in multiple applications, not just in film and video, but in computer games and all kinds of other areas, design and fashion, graphics. All these things have one thing in common, and that is art and design. And I would plead with policymakers, and this is something that the West has learned to its disadvantage, actually, that you do not, in a time of recession or paring back, you do not cut subjects like art and design. You do not. But yet, this is what's happening. STEM is important, yes, but maybe the new acronym called STEAM, where art is included, is one of the solutions to that. Art and design is fundamental to just about everything in life nowadays, emphasized and encouraged and actuated by the use of technology and all its creative powers. So that's a plea I would certainly make. Of course, then you've got the cultural tourism, the fine art areas, museums, heritage, etc., all generators of wealth for countries. Now, I did mention over 2,000 billion globally last year. Africa, the South African film and television industry contributed, I think, about 2.9% of GDP. Is about 170,000 people employed across the sector, if you take a broad view of it. Nigeria, of course, we have Nollywood producing over 2,000 movies. A lot of activity happening there, and all your skills are needed. And, you know, tragically, Africa is a net consumer of international media. All the hip-hop and rap that you hear, while some of it comes from Nigeria, I will admit, but the majority comes from America and Europe. So, you know, and then but there is hope, because when you see the Black Panther heading towards $1 billion in box office receipts, so there is massive hope if the supports are there, and huge opportunity for Africa with its rich culture and how it's expressed in all its art forms, and how this can be meshed and married with new technology to create new products. And it's not just that, but if a film is made somewhere, that generates other forward inward investment. It encourages tourism. They want to see where the programs are made, or where they're assembled, where the music stars live. So you have all these massive knock-on effects. I come from a very small country called Ireland, and the last version of what's it called? Oh dear, I've lost the Space Wars one. What's the new one called? Star Wars. The last version of Star Wars, a lot of it was made on a little part on the west coast of Ireland. And it's impossible to keep control of the tourism who want to come to look at this place. So the point is that there are so many knock-on effects in countries which far exceed the actual profits and the employment opportunities. What do we do about this? Why am I telling you this? Our response to this awareness is a small program which goes on for 1 year, the first 9 months of which is looking at culturally based content. In other words, the stories, the movement, the dance, the cultural artifacts of countries allied to new technology, and with a sense of entrepreneurs and what that can do. And we adopted a living lab approach, an inquiry-based approach to this program over 9 months, created an environment where startups could be encouraged to form, and then brought policymakers and a forum for ministers and from the industry involved to draw conclusions. What did the course contain? We had some animation, some 2D, 3D animation. Games and computer apps was a big module. Music and sound creation was another module. You see it on the poster, over there. By the way, I'll make handouts available a little bit later on the program if you're interested in finding out just a little bit about it. But the essence of it was that we found these young people in different parts of Nairobi, and the amount of creativity was stunning to all of us. What was achieved was way in excess of what we expected, because there was a lot of they did all come in with creative talent, ability, artistic ability, and a sense of aesthetics. But they still had to acquire, one group, the skills of animation, one group, the skills of games and apps development, another group, the skills of music and sound creation. And we provided top quality world training to the tutors, who were all from Kenya, and brought in industry and mentors, of course, and then it was a collaborative activity. Nothing happens in multimedia or the creative industry without teamwork, and without having sound and vision and movement and animation. These are all parts of the product that comes through. So it was
three minutes.
Sorry, am I running over time? Sorry, I'll just finish in the next minute. Can you just give me one more minute? So the flow was from the creative digital skills we created through the cultural industries to then the last 3 months was about the research, and the registering of startups. And over the course of 3 years, we have 29 startups created, either 2 or 3 person startups. The employment, and then other graduates joined existing companies like telecoms companies for advertising and for other multimedia type activity. Sorry, I'm going backwards. But I think that the important thing about it is that we now have devised a model, and we developed 7 or 8 propositions as to what should be in training, whether it's formal within the TVET sector or whether it's informal. But these 8 propositions are some of the things, and to summarize them very briefly, it's about flexibility, it's about talking to the young people. They know where the skill, they know the kinds of jobs that are coming, much better than any of us in this room. And it's about calibrating and collaboration with industry, and mentorship, and all the things that, in fact, were mentioned here yesterday. These are all the characteristics which will go into the flexible, agile workspace. I wouldn't even call it a TVET training studio. I would call it a workspace, a creative digital workspace, which will flexibly change as the products design and shape and production change over the future. So what does this mean for policy? You know, there are serious joined-up supports needed. There is no country in the world who hasn't supported the cultural industries through tax breaks, for example. So what's happening in that area? Because ultimately, the cultural industry, like filmmaking and games development, while it makes big, big money, its key benefit to the country is jobs. Massive amounts of jobs for young people who have creative abilities, incorporating the use of technology. We need structured links with industry and with mentors, obviously. The digital media workforce have to be skilled properly, and I think tangible supports for startups. We provided small seed capital of $2,500 per startup. If they didn't get $2,500 per startup, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have startup companies. So there's no point in talking about you can create startups, you can become an entrepreneur. It's a waste of time unless you give them some money because they can't afford to buy the computer, the basic toolkit of any small startup. And obviously, business mentoring is an ongoing process. So I just have a short version. So thank you, Chairperson. Sorry for overstepping the mark.
Thank you so much. You shouldn't get worried too much. You didn't go overboard a lot. But I think the one key point that seems to emerge from there is understanding which sectors would be requiring skills to be developed. And this is country specific. Each country has to identify where the skills will be required, and therefore you end up creating skills that are more inclusive. Like the case of creative industry that Jerome was talking about, you then have more youth in there, more women included, and so that's the kind of skills development that we're looking at. A few more facts before I call the next presenter. In the capacity needs assessment that the African Capacity Building Foundation did for the African Union on the Agenda 2063, it came out clear that one of the key skills that are required in implementing Agenda 2063 are related to technical skills. And it was interesting to find out that unfortunately, about 75% of university and this training institution enrollments are on social sciences. 75% are on social sciences. And yet 77% of the African countries that were surveyed, we surveyed 45 African countries, had indicated that technical skills are very critical. And yet when you go to their universities, 75% of enrollments were in social sciences. A disconnect between the kind of skills that are required for socio-economic transformation and what is really happening in terms of who is being trained. Now, let me call the next panelist, and this is Moussa, who is Chief of Service from Senegal, so we can hear a bit more about the Senegalese story. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je vais vous présenter rapidement un projet du Sénégal qui s'appelle I40. Après vous avoir remercié de votre présence, après avoir remercié aussi tous les organisateurs et le président de cette séance, de cette session, je voudrais partager avec vous une expérience que nous déroulons actuellement au Sénégal. Cette expérience se veut innovante. Elle se veut aussi destinée à la jeunesse. Elle se veut une expérience aussi de développement adaptée au contexte africain. Sur ce projet que nous avons, ou que les organisateurs ont bien voulu inscrire dans la session 2 de ce présent forum, nous allons rapidement vous présenter quelques aspects que nous avons mis en évidence, qui ne sont pas assez exhaustifs, on peut le dire déjà, mais qui ressortent un peu l'importance que le numérique peut jouer, le rôle important que le numérique peut avoir dans le développement africain, dans la promotion de la jeunesse et aussi dans la mise en évidence ou dans l'exploitation des potentialités africaines ou des potentialités locales africaines pour donner du métier aux jeunes Africains. Excusez-moi. Donc, je vais rapidement, directement à la zone. On a choisi d'orienter ce projet dans les zones rurales globalement. Ça va être implémenté ou c'est implémenté déjà même dans les zones rurales avec un centre pilote dans la zone de Diende qui se situe à l'extrême sud du Sénégal, c'est-à-dire à 400 km de Dakar. Cette zone est choisie pour ses potentialités, bien évidemment, mais aussi pour sa relation aussi avec le développement rural ou certains autres concepts comme le développement inclusif. Donc c'est soucieux un peu de contribuer au développement africain à partir du monde rural qui constitue, j'allais dire, la zone la plus peuplée, parce que l'Afrique est principalement rurale, hein, il ne faut pas s'en cacher. L'Afrique est principalement rurale, donc il est peut-être difficile de concevoir un développement africain sans les jeunes, c'est vrai, mais aussi sans le monde rural. Donc le projet a pour cible principalement les zones rurales. C'est un peu ce qu'on essaie de vous montrer là, pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas le Sénégal, avec cette carte. Par rapport à ce thème, ou au présent thème que nous allons développer, donc le projet I40A veut être un moteur pour le retour vers l'agriculture. Qui dit agriculture, principalement en Afrique, dit développement rural et de toutes les potentialités. Agriculture, certains parlent d'agriculture intégrée ou d'agropastoralisme, etc. Donc c'est toutes les potentialités que le projet cherche à mettre en œuvre, mais selon les contextes locaux. Mon cher prédécesseur vient de parler de développement ou d'éducation basée sur des aspects culturels. Quand ce sera aussi le cas, quand par rapport à des réalités locales, le projet sur les centres les futurs centres à implémenter, les potentialités d'une localité seront essentiellement axées sur les aspects culturels aussi. Le projet dans cette zone sera axé sur la culture, etc. Et j'en passe. Par rapport à ces débuts, c'est axé principalement donc sur l'agriculture. Et ce qu'on peut dire d'innovant ou ce qu'on peut ressortir d'innovant dans ce projet, c'est que ce qu'on a constaté, il y a quand même un nombre important. On parle d'une croissance sur le numérique en Afrique qui est très élevée, peut-être même plus élevée qu'en Europe. C'est vrai, c'est normal, parce qu'on est très en retard et qu'on a quand même une masse de population très élevée. Donc, il est normal quand même qu'en termes de pourcentage parfois ou en termes de valeur relative, cette croissance annuelle, parfois sur certains aspects, soit très élevée et soit jugée parfois très, très importante. Mais ça ne nous donne pas quand même juste les valeurs cibles que nous devons atteindre, nous, aujourd'hui, pour être à la hauteur de certains de ces pays que nous ciblons ou avec qui nous travaillons il y a 50 ans encore. Donc, ce retard doit être comblé. Et l'utilisation du numérique tend, en quelque sorte, à contribuer à ce développement du monde rural en offrant aux jeunes la possibilité de renforcer leurs capacités dans leurs domaines respectifs, dans leurs domaines les plus précis possibles. C'est un cadre, ça va offrir, si on se réfère à ce centre pilote, ça va offrir aux jeunes des formations via, comme tout le monde le sait, hein, si je parle de plateforme, tout le monde le connaît, si je parle de plateforme numérique surtout, si je parle de push SMS, tous les spécialistes le connaissent, Mais en milieu rural, ça va être quelque chose quand même d'innovant et de très important. Si on doit, parce que c'est des zones où on ne connaît pas ça, où actuellement, comme on l'a dit, le nombre de smartphones ou de dispositifs, j'allais dire globalement, numériques, est sans cesse en croissance. Donc, ça va offrir aussi...
2 minutes.
Ok, d'accord. Ça va offrir aux jeunes aussi la possibilité de collaborer avec des partenaires étrangers ou même nationaux, des partenaires nationaux qui ne sont jusque-là pas, avec qui ils n'ont jamais été en contact jusque-là. Donc, ceci fait, bon, puisque là le temps ne nous le permet pas là, et j'ai été un peu lent là par rapport à la présentation ou au cadrage, le projet par rapport, je vais directement à l'agenda parce que c'est des choses aussi qui nous intéressent au premier plan. L'Afrique prospère, je l'ai dit en présentation, ne passera que par les Africains, ne passera que par les potentialités africaines. Tout à l'heure, on a parlé de nouveaux métiers. On pense à des nouveaux métiers, on ne pense pas aux potentialités locales, on pense tout de suite aux nouveaux métiers que les autres, par rapport à leur réalité, pensent pour nous. Je pense que dans le cadre africain, il faut plutôt penser à des métiers qui vont être portés sur nos potentialités et en s'arrimant un peu sur ces aspects de l'agenda 2030, des agendas 2030-2063, le projet va mettre en avant les technologies, mais pour développer les localités les plus éloignées par rapport à leur propre potentialité. Donc c'est ça qui l'arrime bien évidemment pour ressortir un peu la pertinence par rapport à ce projet. Et par rapport à l'actualité mondiale, hein, tout le monde parle de fracture numérique, tout le monde parle de... Mais ce qu'on va remarquer avec ces projets qui vont s'implanter au fur et à mesure dans les localités, c'est que ça va permettre non seulement aux jeunes de développer eux-mêmes de porter eux-mêmes le développement de leur localité, mais ça va permettre aux décideurs aussi de définir ou de préparer des orientations stratégiques par rapport aux différentes localités. Donc, bon, pour les dispositifs, c'est peut-être pas forcément nécessaire parce que le temps ne nous le permet pas. Je vais peut-être vous remercier par rapport à ça. Tous les aspects sont mis en place hein, pour assurer le suivi, la planification, le suivi et même l'évaluation hein, de ces projets. Ce à quoi peut-être je vais appeler nos chers et généreux organisateurs, parce que des événements comme ça sont très importants. Et c'est des cadres quand même particuliers qui offrent parce que là, je pense qu'on est plusieurs nationalités. On a quand même une organisation assez importante et assez costaude qui, aujourd'hui, pour moi, doit faire l'objet demain d'un bilan, d'un suivi et éventuellement des ajustements. Qui dit ça dit. Après, on s'attend, nous, peut-être à avoir un plan d'action avec peut-être un dispositif organisationnel au niveau des différents pays qui vous permettrait, vous, quand même d'assurer en quelque sorte la pérennisation et la durabilité de vos bonnes actions. Parce que l'Afrique ne sera développée que par les Africains. Le ministre tunisien l'a dit tout à l'heure, il faut que nous-mêmes on s'engage. Mais il faut qu'avant qu'on s'engage, qu'on en soit conscient. Je m'excuse quand même d'avoir été un peu plus long que prévu et je vous remercie beaucoup.
Thanks so much. Moussa, no matter how intimidating I was, he kept giving me a charming smile, so it was becoming very hard to get him out. But now, thanks so much. The intervention was very good, and I think the e-Karanta is a very exciting innovation in Senegal. And one key aspect that is exciting is rural target. And key in that it's also trying to revamp agriculture. So it's basically looking at, a rural economy development. And I think this is very key. And most of our populations in Africa are based in the rural areas. And so if we are going with innovations in that direction, it's going to be more inclusive. So I think thanks a lot for sharing that. You can always catch up with him during break time. By the way, break time is not for looking at your WhatsApps or trying to answer emails. It's for networking. And networking is a skill that we're also encouraging here. All right, so let me go to the last presenter, who is going to tell us a story about Ghana. He is William Idem-Senyo. He's the CEO of Impact Hub. By the way, I hear that if something is not working in your country and you want to learn, go to Ghana. So here we are.
I think we need to pay this guy to do our comms for us in Ghana. So, yeah, the room is a bit silent, and I can understand why. When people are tired after flying and you feed them lunch, they just go dead. So, the ones in the room, you are the real heroes. Thanks for staying and listening, and if you're still listening, hopefully we can make it worth your time. It's exciting to be in an AFDB, AU, NEPAD platform talking about technology. That's not a place we talk technology. And historically, these things have happened in spaces with very few policy people. It's taken at least a decade of hard work by Africa's young people to put this on the map. And so I'd have expected to see a lot more young people as we talk about their future and what they've managed to build single-handedly, most times with zero government support. So in the future, I hope that in these conversations, the young people that have shaped these things will be at the table talking about these things and putting their perspective in play. I don't see much of that here, and I'm hoping that changes. In recognition of that, what I'm trying to talk about is the years of hassle that has taken young people across Africa to be able to make technology a viable option in a continent that has been slow sometimes to adopt it. And trying to share the Ghana experience of how that transition has happened from an ecosystem perspective, but also from a very grassroots, no government involved angle. So I'm saying it's how do you build a generation of grassroots job creators in a new digital economy? In most cases, with zero government engagement. And how do you then scale that 10 times over once governments have realized the opportunity at stake? So to set a pace, let me give you some local perspective of the Ghanaian example. 26, 27 million people, very progressive country, so certain things lift off the ground easily than in other African markets, granted. Of that, about 200,000 young people joining the workforce every year, a full half of them with a higher education, diploma or degree of some sort. And then another half, not that well educated. And an economy that is expanding to create formal sector jobs of just about 10,000 annually. Now that's a huge deficit right there. And across the African continent, this is the prevailing situation. So we woke up one of these days and everyone said, you know what, corporate Africa is not expanding rapidly, it's not providing opportunity, where's the next thing? Everyone says, ooh, technology. And so you look and you see a bunch of kids that have managed to create some apps, are making some money. Then global media sets in and there's a whole narrative about African technology and innovation and all of that. So what happens? Governments are trying to dig into that. But I think the fundamental question is how do we connect skills to this new idea that we are talking about? And the truth, as Thomas pointed out, is that across the continent, we are still training for skills that are not necessarily the core of what is needed in this new economy. If 75% of your education is focused on the humanities, yet you claim that digital jobs are the jobs of the future, you are either lying to yourself or you are bullshitting someone. And I think in most African cases, it's both. So on one part, young people have decided that they have to, there's a skills gap between your higher ed and the skills that are required in the job market. So we have decided to create an organization that is focused on bridging that skills gap and using an approach that is also very niche to Ghana, I must say, but can be replicated in multiple ways. So I had a video to show, but short time. If I do have time, I'll show that. But you what we did was to take a 1 kilometer radius of one of the best locations in the city of Accra and try to create an alternative reality where young people can go and thrive. So anywhere from amazing real estate spaces to living spaces to curating an experience that is very different from the mainstream economy and that encourages small businesses in the tech industry to thrive. At the core of that is access. You have to be able to create multiple levels of access for young people to learn, to connect, and to grow. And that could be a mix of local access, providing them access to opportunities to learn in spaces that ordinarily they won't be able to go, or bringing global technology giants like Facebook, Google, to fix that technology gap. And when you do that, you also bring learning and opportunity from other parts of the world. And then you build a community around these things. A lot of what you are seeing happen today is because across Africa, there's core community of technology people who've managed to, over time, iterate and understand what works in a very dysfunctional, mostly dysfunctional African economies. And so how do you build community to be able to let these things thrive through curated events, learning, and all of that? And then the core of these things that most people never talk about, but they like to talk about the flashy part, is infrastructure. In most African states, power is not a given. Internet is not a given. How can we talk about digital economies without these core basic things that people think in other parts of the world is just like air that you breathe? So there's a fundamental flaw in some of the conversations when there is no talk about the core infrastructure needed to actually build technology companies or build digital skills. And we've managed to invest capital in getting Google Fiber into these spaces, high-speed internet, investing in independent grids by investing in solar that can be able to make sure that these spaces that these young people operate out of is very different from the rest of the city reality. And then once you have all of these things, how can you accelerate it 10x with capital and build a layer of capital on top of that? So typical example of our space is very diverse community of people focused on learning, using like developer groups sessions to be able to pass learnings between peers, building a very open environment that allows anyone who is interested to learn to show up. So even how you design spaces is important as we have these conversations about how to train our young people. And then there's also the question about the future of tech outside of software. There's hardware conversations, IoT, making hardware products on the African continent. How do we even begin to have that conversation? We've invested capital working with Siemens to build spaces with hardware prototyping labs that can allow people, if you decide to build some biodigester, how do you prototype before you can get it to manufacturing in China? 3D printers, CNC millers, laser cutters. So, can you show everything? So, my point, the point I wanted to drive home is that a lot of these policy conversations can be very meta, but it always has to be grounded in the grassroots reality that even brought this conversation to the fore in the first place. And it's taken a lot of young people learning from other parts of the world to even make this a viable conversation for most of the policy people in this room to consider. And as we go forward to talk about these things and as we shape the future of these things, we should never forget who made it a viable option. It's Africa's young people, and they constantly need to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. Very clever again. He's just put the video at the end, so whether you like it or not, you somehow are forced to watch it going through. And his presentation was also very engaging, to the point that I ended up forgetting to stop you that it's time up. All right. I think one key issue that is coming out really from here is now we're talking more about some kind of social entrepreneurship, job creators in the youth. And one key point that is touched on, and I think which we need to really be considering in our conversation, is how do we promote infrastructure that is going to be core in terms of developing the kind of skills that we want in the youth. By the way, before I open up quickly, you go to a dental clinic one day, and in there you find a dentist, the person who calls themselves a dentist. You tell them you've got a toothache, and they ask you to open your mouth. And you do, and he really spots a very bad tooth in you. Says, wow, I think we need to do something about this. And then he tells you that I've never taken a tooth out anyway. You'll be the first person. Please open your mouth, let me do it. How many of us would open our mouth? In other words, there are sometimes a lot of theories that we are training in our training institutions with very little practice. And so we've created skills that are not really required out there. And in the end, we are creating a very dangerous zone. Or in other words, we are creating economies that can hardly develop because of the kind of skills that we're developing out there. Okay, now, I want interventions from the floor, but instead of you just asking these people questions, I want you to give out what you think, in a minute or two, what you think is the action point that is required in as far as making sure that we have the skills that are required for the market is concerned. So an intervention in terms of a key action point from your point, and it will help those rapporteurs here to be able to come up with a solid report in terms of what comes out of this session. So, and I'm going to make sure that you don't go beyond 2 minutes. If you go beyond 2 minutes, I will just cut you off. I know you avoid me during tea time, but that's fine. So, any hands up? I'm not saying if you've got a point of clarity, you shouldn't ask, but it should really be more of a point of clarity than just asking questions. So let me take a number at the same time. Number 1, I think I'll go by Bodo's style of giving numbers. So number 1 here. Next. Wow. Number 2. So we only have 2. I'm not going to open up again. Forget it. Oh, now I'm seeing hands up. Okay, number 3. Number 4. Okay, so let's go. And please, you should mention who you are and where you come from before you make your intervention. Thank you.
I am Tom Olango from the Ministry of Education, Kenya. And my question goes to the presenter from Senegal. First of all, I thank him for the good presentation. However, I would like to know or I would like him to comment on the ultimate destination of the youths whom they train. I'm saying so because as much as we do something for the youths on as far as training is concerned, the youths are equally interested in knowing what are they going to benefit out of the training that they get. Now, this comment is anchored on the fact that it is important that before you come up with such a project where you improve the digital literacy of the youths, it is also important that you get to know the labor market information so that after these youths have been trained, they are able to be absorbed almost immediately. Now, in this regard, I would like to know from the presenter from Senegal, what linkages have they put in place in view of the fact that where the project is located is a rural setup, to the extent that when the youths graduate after training, they're able to secure employment?
Thank you so much. You are very clever because I was about to stop you, but just on time. Number 2.
Thank you, moderator. I'm Simfukwe Willis. I work for SADC. I'm technical advisor for children and youth. My first point and observation is that for Africa, impact investment should not be defined in any way. It should be just investing in the youth and children. That's the bottom line. Now, in terms of what should be done to move forward, I think there was a question that was discussed before we went for lunch, that even when we talk about the youth, we don't have concrete information, quality data on where they are, and yes, we have pockets of records. That's the starting point. Can we get the correct statistics as Africa on the number of youth? They are cited by UNP and but in our own records, we don't have the right numbers. So if we don't have the right numbers and correct information, we won't target appropriately. The other aspect is basically financing, both at the government level. When you look at the funding that goes to the sector or ministries of youth, it's meager resources. We need to shift that. And also the private sector engagement and contribution in terms of interacting with youth agencies and youth councils in the continent. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Number 3 was somewhere here.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Obiro from Business Africa, which is a confederation of employers across Africa. And I'll go straight to, I want to make 2 points, and one is to the question you posed: what can we do so that the skills that are being imparted to the youths then are relevant to the labor market? For us, from Business Africa and from industry, it's very simple. Let's create a collaboration between the training institutions, these learners, and the industry. We need to have institutions, TVET institutions, that have a linkage with specific industries so that then they can be able to get feedback in what they're training, and even the collaboration can go far, where the training happens on industry, and the industry might be having some equipment, then that training institution can train there. The practicals that these young people will be doing actually becomes parts of in the production line. Now, when we look at the digital skills, for the digital skills to help Africa, we want these digital skills to be based on industrial development of Africa. If we have agriculture, people who are looking at the curriculum and what type of skills to give, what type of innovations, what type of technology will help our agriculture. Let's train our people in that area so that then they can be able to use that technology, those skills in agriculture. We go like that to other areas, and then it will be helpful to our economies. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those interventions. We had number 4 somewhere there.
Hi, I'm Amy Logan from Humana People to People. I just wanted to thank all of the speakers. Excellent presentations, and it's been great to hear a little bit more about the actual reality that a lot of us face in our day-to-day work, trying to provide young people with opportunities and the skills that they need, and bringing those ideas kind of to the ground. Our action point with my colleagues here was that we think that one of the most important action points would be a comprehensive curriculum reform for primary and secondary and also TVET institutions. The presentations today kind of highlight that it's ICT and digital skills are a cross-cutting issue, and so they should be rolled out over all education outlets and industries. And my question was for Mr. Senor. It was really exciting to hear about your work at the Impact Hub. I'm just wondering how you see the role of TVET institutes and training providers, whether you see it as there's opportunities for collaboration there, or whether you kind of see yourself as a competitor to those. And if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
So those are the 4 interventions. I think there are only 2 questions that have come out. The rest were suggestions and recommended action points, and we are very grateful for that. I'm sure that our colleagues that are organizers have taken note of those. So let's start. We only have 2 questions. William, you take the question that has come, and then after you, we'll go to Senegal. Moussa, you also look at the question about destination of the trained youth. So, William, you can go ahead.
So you raise a point. There's obviously a consensus that curriculums across Africa need an overhaul, no doubt. But there's also another fact, which is that the ones that have already been trained by the funny curriculum are still out there. So you need to build a bridge between what they were taught and what they need. So they said there's something that needs to happen is acknowledge that we messed up a whole generation of people, fix that, and make sure we don't mess the next one up. So I think that's where there's an opportunity for institutions like ours to understand how we can work with organizations that have focused on technical and vocational training. So the way we see it is that a guy graduating the University of Ghana, 23 years old, 0 skills to thrive, except a paper. You take that person and you connect them with someone who is likely in the informal sector, but understands how to do a few things right, and find a way for those people to create new collaborations that bring new ideas to life. So a typical example in Ghana, there's a part called Kumasi Magazine, where these artisans are able to mold every part of a car and fix it. They can mold it from the ground up, but they don't necessarily understand the basic physics and the engineering behind. They just know how to get things done. And then there's that guy with an MSc in engineering from the university that also understands some basics, but has 0 skills in understanding how these things actually work in real life. Those combinations are the things that we need to make new things happen on the continent. So institutions like ours are finding a way to bring the informal and formal economies and bring a nexus of sorts. And spaces like the maker space, these are some of the ideas we are testing.
Thank you so much, William.
So that's how we see it.
Thanks a lot. Can we have Senegal?
Bon, je vous remercie par rapport à vos contributions et aussi à la question, ou aux questions qui se sont adressées un peu ou qui se sont intéressées un peu au thème que nous avons développé. À savoir principalement que prévoyons-nous de faire pour ces jeunes-là que nous allons former. La méthode de sélection de ces jeunes déjà prévoit leur réutilisation. Parce que ce qu'on compte faire, ce n'est pas de déplacer des jeunes dans des zones d'où ils ne sont pas originaires, mais c'est d'aller dans des zones directement. C'est ce qu'on a commencé à faire par rapport à la zone pilote. On est directement allé voir les populations, pour vérifier quels sont leurs besoins en termes de renforcement de capacité, pour vérifier un peu où se trouvait aussi la jeunesse de ce terroir. Ce qu'on a remarqué, c'est que majoritairement, on ne rencontrait que des vieilles personnes pratiquement. On ne rencontrait que des vieilles personnes, alors que bon, c'était en pleine même saison des cultures. Donc là, pendant qu'on avait besoin de ces jeunes, on ne les voyait pas. Donc le projet cible d'abord les zones rurales, mais priorise la formation des jeunes en utilisant les services numériques. Parce que ça nous amène à une autre préoccupation, c'est-à-dire de savoir les technologies agricoles. L'utilisation des services numériques est un moyen principalement pour atteindre les objectifs de formation de ces jeunes dans les domaines demandés. Parce que c'est eux qui vont principalement exprimer leurs besoins, qui partent de leur potentialité locale. Donc, quand on va les former, c'est sûr que c'est des jeunes qui ont déjà c'est des jeunes du terroir qui ont un potentiel parfois agricole, dont ils sont héritiers, qui ont des terrains, qui détiennent parfois du foncier dans la zone, ou qui ont la possibilité d'exploiter la barque ou les exploitations de leur papa par rapport à un cours d'eau existant pour faire la pêche, etc. Donc, c'est des jeunes
merci beaucoup.
que l'on veut laisser sur place.
Merci.
Vous nous excusez. Merci beaucoup.
Oui, merci. You still can catch up with him in case you want to learn a bit more about this during break time. But I really want to thank the panel. I know we have the other two. I want to give you a chance in case of something. Unless you've got a minute that you think there's one key message you want to give out before you leave. Any of the panel members. If there's one key message, in case you think you still have one key message you want to leave before you leave the podium.
Yes, there's one, I think, and I think it was mentioned at the corner here, is the continuum of curriculum development. It's a huge issue, right from primary all the way through. I mentioned the arts and the aesthetic area, which must be incorporated. It drives all of digital production. I think the idea of starting mini companies in secondary schools is a very, very important issue. And as you said, you cannot, entrepreneurialism is not a theory, it's not a body of knowledge. It's not to be delivered by somebody who has read the book or 3 chapters of the book ahead of providing a lecture on entrepreneurialism. It's something you practice and you get right and you get wrong. So the best way to introduce young people to that entrepreneurialism spirit is to conduct mini companies, little mini enterprises in secondary education. There are many, many examples of this, of these young people going on then to become entrepreneurs once they had the professional skills in later life.
Yeah, mine is that there's one thing Africa's youth has going for them, is this idea of technology and its possibilities. As these regional bodies bring their expertise and resources to aid this process, don't forget, it's still about the young people. And let's not bring inefficiencies to something that is supposed to be agile, fast, and very, very efficient. So technology is the one thing we are hoping that governments across the continent will admit they don't understand necessarily well and allow young people to help shape their own futures. Thank you.
All right. My take is this. I would want us to be encouraged and challenge one another and form alliances such that at the end of this forum, we actually can, two people from two countries can actually form alliances and make things happen, such that by the time we're having a program like this next year, we can all look back and have success stories told from this room. Thank you very much.
Moi, je finirai par dire qu'on a coutume de dire que les compétences doivent être adaptées aux potentialités du marché. Mais en Afrique, on a plus besoin de s'adapter aux potentialités africaines parce que c'est les autres qui viennent nous les exploiter. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Directeur.
Merci beaucoup. With that, I want you to give a big hand to the panel. I think that this is perhaps the best panel that we've ever had. All right, no, thanks so much for being a very patient audience as well, and as the contributions. As we move out and back, I hope then we can have the next sessions coming up. Thanks once again.
And thank you very much, Thomas, for moderating that session. May we please give them a round of applause as they walk back. Thank you.